We've been talking on the first 5 consciousnesses. Who am I? What's this identity? It's a combination of body and the mind. The body is a physiological system, and the mind is the consciousness. Vijnana. Vijnana is a Sanskrit word. So by now, we should well know that Buddhism is not a faith. It's not a blind faith. The Buddha said, in order to meditate, you must know how your mind works. You must know how your mind works in order to meditate. You can just sit there and meditate and don't know what's going on in the consciousness. So Buddhism is not a faith, it's not a blind faith, it's a study of your mind. In one sect of Buddhism, which is the Vijnana Matrata, is the study of one's own mind. So we've been doing that for a long time. So right now we continue and continue. We started with the first 5 consciousnesses first, and then we will study the 6th consciousness, which is the Mano consciousness, and then we will study the 7th consciousness, which is the Manas consciousness, and then the 8th, which is the Alaya consciousness. So right now we're still in the first 5. So we know that the body, we have the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the tongue, and then the body, we have hairs, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, veins, bone structures, liquid and bone and internal organs, and all these, the body, which include, of course, the intestines, the heart, the blood, the circulation, everything, that's the body, right? Why don't we put eyes, ears, nose, tongue at the front end? Because they are the sensory organs that interact with externalities. So that's the reason why we put them in the forefront, so that we study the first 5 consciousnesses in detail. And then, of course, we have the brain, which is connected to the perception of it, the consciousness. So the body and the mind is connected together by the brain. The brain connects the body and the mind together. The perception first, with the vision, the hearing, the smell, the taste, and the touch, which is exactly what vision relates to eyes, hearing relates to the ears, smell relates to the nose, and of course, taste relates to tongue. And then how about touch? Touch means the system's interaction, which relates to our internal organs and how the body works. So touch is not just touching, it's the interaction of all the body together. So that is the first 5 consciousnesses that we've been studying, which call it the first Vijnana, 2nd Vijnana, 3rd Vijnana, 4th, and the 5th Vijnana. Vijnana, we simply translate it as consciousness. And then we go on, of course, to cognition of it, which is the Mano consciousness, that's the 6th consciousness. Perception is not the cognition. Cognition is the rationalization, the intellectualization, the analysis, the decision making. So the first 5 is only a reception, a perception consciousness. And then we have the ego proliferation, which is the 7th consciousness, and in the Sanskrit language, it's the Manas Vijnana. And then, of course, we go into the store consciousness, which is the Alaya Vijnana, the 8th consciousness. So these 8 consciousnesses include I, includes me, includes you, that's me. And the Buddha said, study yourself in detail so that you know how your mind works. And this has been studied since 2,600 years ago. The Buddha touched on physiology and psychology 2,600 years ago. So this is just a review. All right, then we've been studying it in 9 modes, categories. We studied how the first five perceive the world, how the first five consciousnesses get to know things, the modes of knowledge, the moral nature of it, the realm of its activities, and then right now we are at number 5. We already have spent a lot of time in 1, 2, 3, and 4. We spent about 30 hours, 40 hours on 1 to 4. Now we are doing concomitant mental functions. Number 5. We're doing number 5. Of course, after number 5, we still have to do number 6, 7, 8, and 9. Right now, we are doing number 5. What is number 5? Concomitant mental functions. That means when your first 5 consciousnesses interact with externalities, not just the consciousness, each consciousness itself interact. At the same time, there are some simultaneous, concomitant mental functions that help this consciousness to do what? To interact, to express. And these mental functions are hidden inside of you. So if we can give an analysis, an example, assuming each consciousness is a king. So we've got 5 kings in there, and all these concomitant mental functions are the ministers that help the kings to perform, to act, to speak, to do all kinds of activities. And we need to study these mental functions because these are responsible for you, for what you have done, for what you have said, for all the karmic energy that you created. Many of these ministers are really bad ministers. In this parliament, many of these are bad ministers, many are good, some are good ministers. All right, let's get into them. So, how many concomitant mental functions are there? There are 51. Now, remember, there's 51 in here, concomitant mental functions. Altogether, there are 51 mental functions. And out of these, the first 5 are omnipresent functions. That means it does not matter which consciousness is interacting with externalities. These are always present. They always work. They're always generally active, the first 5. And the first 5 also, the first 5 consciousnesses also have this omnipresent mental functions. And then there are contingent functions. That means sometimes it relates to certain certain consciousness, and sometimes it does not relate to it. It's particular, it's contingent upon situations and objects. And then there are unwholesome functions, 26 of them. Unwholesome functions, we call them mental afflictions or delusions. There are 6 root delusions, 8 primary delusions, and 2 medium delusions, and 10 minor delusions. There are 26 of them. So if we're talking about ministers, there are 26 of these ministers that are unwholesome. And then there are wholesome functions too, 11 of them. And there are also 4 indeterminate, not sure. But in this case, the first 5 consciousnesses do not have indeterminate ones. They're all determined. Your eyes, when your eyes look at something, your eyes determined to look at. Your ears, for sure, you hear something. Your taste, for sure, taste something. So out of the 51 total concomitant mental functions, only 34 are applicable to the first 5 consciousnesses. And just for interest, right now, before we introduce the 6th consciousness, the 6th consciousness has all the 51 functions. Your 6th consciousness, the mano consciousness, contain the 51, all of them. But the first 5, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, etc., only have 34. And just talking about it, you may not know, but I already have talked about all of them in my first few sessions, because you need to know them in the first few sessions. But right now, maybe it's just good to regurgitate it, review it very briefly for this session, so that you know what are these functions. So let's get to omnipresent mental functions. The first one is attention, the second one is contact. What is attention? The holding in thought of an object that has earlier been experienced, its function consists of keeping the mind on the object. That means the eyes have to pay attention to what the eyes are seeing. The ears have to pay attention for what the ears are listening to. So the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the body, the interactions. In other words, if your first 5 consciousnesses do not pay attention, then there's no consciousness. If your eyes are looking at, say I'm looking at a clock, and I'm not paying attention to what I'm looking at, the fact that I'm seeing this clock, that such consciousness is never created because I never have paid attention to it. So that's consciousness not created. You gotta have attention. But when your senses are interacting, your senses will pay attention to it. So the attention is so omnipresent mental functions. Is it good or bad? No such thing as good or bad. It's just attention. The second one is contact. Contact, that means your sensory organs, the object of the contact, and the consciousness, 3 of them are both created. Then there's such consciousness. There's a contact to it. The contact is the sensory organ, contact the object or situations, and then the consciousness is created when there is attention. In other words, if your tongue is eating, when you are very grief-stricken, you're so sad, you don't know what you're eating. You don't have that eating consciousness because you don't have the attention to it, even though you have the contact. So all these have to be present, omnipresent mental functions. In order for the consciousness to actually work out, all these 5 must be present. And actually, if actually you're doing it, all these 5 are present. Sensation comprises the 3 types: pleasurable, non-pleasurable, neither pleasurable or non-pleasurable. Sensation. Sensation is created in the process of the consciousness created. So you either feel pleasurable, or you feel non-pleasurable, or it's neutral. So when your eyes look at something, you like something, it's pleasurable. You hate it, you don't like it, it's non-pleasurable. Sometimes you don't have an expression, it's neutral. There's always this 3 nature. And they are named sensation because they are the causes of craving. There's something you like, you crave for it again. There's something you like to taste, you crave for it again. Something you like to smell, you crave for it again. Your body likes certain acts, you crave for it again. You create craving. And that craving is the cause of suffering too. You crave for it. You're attached to it. Perception, ideation, this is the aggregate of ideas. Namely, the apprehension of marks such as it's blue or yellow, long or short, male or female, friend or enemy, and so on. It is that which grabs the marks of an object. It is the cause of reasoning and investigation. That's the perception part of it. You're perceiving it. When you're perceiving it, your eyes catch the marks of it. Your eyes determine, oh, this is blue, this is yellow, this is male, and this is female. So preliminary judgment. The eyes itself don't give full judgment. The full judgment belongs to the 6th consciousness. In other words, your eyes do not judge, oh, this is Mr. Chen that I'm looking at, or this Mr. Chen is a friend that I met many years ago in certain occasions. You don't go to history. Your eyes don't go to history. Your eyes only observe the present marks. So your eyes only see that person. Your eyes don't say, this is Janet, and Janet is sad now, Janet is happy now, or Janet looks beautiful now, Janet looks ugly now. They don't make the judgment. They just capture that marks and have a very preliminary differentiation. And the reasoning and the investigation would go a little further to the mind, to the mental consciousness, to the sixth consciousness. But there's got to be perception first before it goes to the sixth consciousness. So the last one is volition. Volition comprises evaluations such as decision-making and action. Here, an action is expressed through three general modes: bodily deed, speech, and thought. The karmas of deeds and speech have initiation of action as the basis, and thought has evaluation and decision-making as the basis. So in other words, volition, it renders the thought creative. It is a mental karma. The eyes, the ears, the nose does not have an in-depth volition. It's just preliminary. The in-depth volition goes to the sixth consciousness. But the eyes, the first five, has a little bit of volition into it, only the preliminary ones. So that's a general one. That's why we call it the omnipresent one. Now, so we have reviewed the five. So remember, it's attention, contact, sensation, perception, and volition. Now these are the five omnipresent mental functions that happen whenever your five consciousnesses are created in the process of your sensory organs get in contact with the objects. These are the five omnipresent, always present, simultaneous. All right. And then there are also the contingent ones. The contingent ones include the desire, resolve, mindfulness, or memory, in this case, concentration and intelligence. These are the next contingent functions that when your first five are interacting with externalities, these may or may not happen. They are not generally active. It depends on the situation. Rather than being active in every situation, they function only in regard to specific objects or situations. They are not directly associated with either wholesome or unwholesome or indeterminate, because it could be any one of these. So let's quickly see what each one is. These contingent functions. First one, desire for action. This is the liking for an undertaking. It is a mental function when one sees an object for which it holds interest and concern and hopes to desire it. It may be wholesome or unwholesome. So in other words, when your eyes look at something beautiful and you say this is beautiful, and you would like to hold it, to get it, to steal it, or whatever, you robbed it, or whatever, desire. Sometimes you may create that desire, and sometimes you may not. Sometimes you may create a wholesome desire, and sometimes you may create unwholesome desires. So that desire is your desire for an action. Your eyes, when your eyes see something pretty, then you have a desire for an action to obtain. So that's the next. You may not have that desire. Next one, resolved, is the approval. It is a resolved with regard to an object. It is the mental function that a determination has been made to pursue the object, holding to the certainty of it. The interest is intensify and stays for the object. You resolve to do it. You have that desire to, for example, you went into a shop, okay, and you saw something beautiful, and you didn't have any money, but you desire to get it, and you resolve that I must get it, in spite of the fact that I don't have any money. So you approve that you want to get it. You desire to do something, even at the expense of doing a misdeed, you want to do it. And you listen to something, you listen to some music, you desire to have that music, and you resolve that I must have that music. So this is contingent upon what you want to do. And then mindfulness is you remember. Now this mindfulness is not the mindfulness related to the meditation. The mindfulness, you are very mindful. You remember a memory, a dharma, by virtue of which the mind does not forget the object, but cherishes it in order to to so express it. Mindfulness is that which enables thought to remember an object clearly, not to forget what has been done, is now being done, or will be done in the future. It also applies to samadhi, to meditation too. You have your desire to concentrate on the breath as your anapanasati, and you want to do a concentration. That's on the good part. So in other words, your contingent mental functions could be good, could be bad. If your mindfulness is applied to meditation for concentration, that's good for you because you're creating concentration and mindfulness and samadhi. But if your mindfulness is concentrated on, I must, at the expense of stealing, even by the action of stealing, by all means, I must get this material I want. It depends on which one, contingent on what. Is it a wholesome mindfulness or unwholesome mindfulness? It applies to tasting too. You want to taste it. You want to, at the expense of killing an animal, killing a pig, a duck, a chicken. You want to taste. You like the taste of fish. You want to go out fishing. You want to, hook up the fish and bring it in the fishing part of it, and then you want to kill that fish, and then you fried it. That's your mindfulness. You like the taste of it, which involves in killing it. Concentration, absorption or concentration. Samadhi is the unity of the object with the mind, that is the Dhamma, by virtue of which the mind, in an uninterrupted series, remains on an object. Concentration is that which causes thought to be focused on the object. Focusing the mind on the same object constitutes samadhi. Samadhi does not exist separately. That means you have a contingent mental function, 5 contingent mental functions that are hidden in everybody. You desire to have it, you resolve to have it, you remember to have it, you concentrate, you want to have it, then you have it done. Your karma is created. It could be good or bad. You desire to be a university student, and in your grade 12 and grade 11, you always be mindful. I want to go to UBC. I want to study for it. I want to take all the exams. I want to get good marks for it. I'm very mindful of it. So you desire to get into UBC, to be a university student. You resolve that you must do it. You approve of such an act that you will do in the future. And then you're very mindful. You went to all the lectures, you studied, you put in all your time to study for it, you took your exams, and then you send in your applications, and you really concentrate on what you're doing. Finally, you'll be successfully, you get registered as a UBC student, you get accepted by UBC, then you're a UBC student. Because initially you have that contingent mental function in you that you want to be it. If you have that successful contingent functions that you want to be a Buddha, and you're so determined, you're so mindful, you're concentrated, you become a Buddha. Who do you want to become to be? It's all in your mental functions. If you think positively, then you do it positively. If you think it negatively, you do it negatively. How do you educate yourself? Do you know that you have these ministers exist in you, in your parliament of mind? But you haven't utilized them. You tend to agree with the unwholesome ministers, and you tend to agree with the unwholesome contingent functions. You don't get into the wholesome contingent functions. You want to be negatively concentrated on what you're doing. And if you are a political leader, you want to be negatively using your contingent functions to attack, to occupy, to possess another territories. Then you wage wars. So you see the difference? All right, last but not least, the intelligence of it, the discernment. It is the function of the mind that makes the choice of accepting or rejecting the object. It could be a wholesome one, unwholesome one. It works only within the parameters of the six consciousness, but also within the seven consciousness. So in other words, this intelligence, contingent factors, is particularly active in the six consciousness. The intelligence do not happen in the eyes. Such an intelligence, the discernment does not happen to the eyes, the ears, the taste. It only happens to the sixth consciousness, which is the mental consciousness. So these are contingent mental functions. We have learned the 10 mental functions. The first 5 are omnipresent ones, simultaneous. It happens to every consciousness. It's present all the time in all situations. The next 5 is contingent mental functions that may or may not happen, that may be wholesome or unwholesome. It depends on that person. So these are the 10 mental functions that are always inherent in us. Right now we are only studying the omnipresent functions and the particular functions. It involves a lot of interpretations. Don't forget the categories. Don't forget the main topics. Don't get lost in the forest. This is the whole forest. Don't get lost. It's easy to get lost because you think this is complicated. There's 108 in some situations. You see, sometimes I'm amazed at how the Buddha can present these things to us. It's so systematic, so logical, and it really follows your thought through. It's like a course. It's like an academic course in your studies. Right now, the first 5 consciousnesses have these 2, right? And then the first 5 consciousnesses only have 13 of the unwholesome functions. The first 5. And all the 11 wholesome functions, and they do not have the 4 indeterminate functions. So the first 5 consciousnesses are better than the 6 because out of the 26, they only have the 13. They only have half of the unwholesome functions. And right now, we have 15 minutes to go, and let us examine what are the 13 unwholesome functions that pertain to the first 5 consciousnesses, and what are the 11 wholesome functions that our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, our body have. What are these? Let's get into them. Unwholesome mental functions. So we have 6 root delusions, very basic ones. The root of all evil, we sometimes call them, the root of all evil. Some people say money is the root of all evils, or urge for fame and reputation is the root of all evil. But these are the root: greediness, anger, ignorance, arrogance, doubt, and false views. These are the 6 root delusions that we all have in our consciousness, because our consciousnesses are tainted, are polluted. They all contain these, and they are in 2 categories too. Some of them mostly accumulated from the present life, because of the background, because of education, because of the family background, society background, because you all have this. Some of these. And some of them are brought forward from previous births, previous lives. And to eliminate the present ones, the present life delusions, are much easier than to eliminate all those are inborn ones that have been accumulated from eons ago, from many, many lives ago. They have been brought forward to now in our consciousness. Those are extremely difficult to get rid of because they have been grounded for millions of years. So we need to study them so that we know them. When you are doing meditation, when you are studying Buddhism, when you're studying about life, you have to know your weaknesses our weaknesses in order to improve. Needless to say, we don't just say, Buddha, you give me all the blessings. I want the best of the whole world. I want money, I want fame, I want health. I want everything to be the best. Yeah, you want everything to be the best, but you're craving for the worst. You feel with delusions. In the process of getting them, you hurt a lot of other people. You create new karma. But the Buddha said, look at the basic karmic delusions that are inside of us. Some of them, most of them, are inborn. That's the reason why when the baby was born, you think a baby is clean, like a white cloth clean? No. The baby already has a personality in there. Some babies react in different ways. Some babies have more jealousy. Some babies have less jealousy. They're all different because their accumulated inborn mental functions are different. Okay, and then what are these? Primary ones. Disbelief, laziness, indolence, thoughts wandering. You think you cannot concentrate in your meditation? You brought that habit from previous life. You cannot concentrate. You brought that habit from previous lives. And torpor, when you sink into torpidity, sink into dullness, forgetfulness, distraction, false understanding, and you stick to that false understanding. Now you also have shamelessness, no guilt. We call it the medium mental functions, unwholesome mental functions. The root mental functions are the very grounded ones. The primary are the very inferential ones. And now this medium mental functions also exist. We classify them as medium. Shamelessness and no guilt. You are shameless, for example, you may not perform something really harmful to others, so they are classified as medium. No guilt, it's just a feeling. I have a feeling of no guilt. It does not matter. I never say sorry. Whatever I have done, I stick to it. I've done bad things, but I stick to it. I never have any guilt. That's unwholesome mental functions. But they only happen inside of you, so that would be classified as medium. Now, what are these? Secondary ones. Hatred, vengeance. Hatred is expressed. Vengeance is hidden in you. Vexation, jealousy, harm, parsimony. You know what is parsimony? You never want to give. You never want to give out. You always assess, why do I have to give it out? This is my money. This is me. But some people, some people really want to give. If they have $1,000 in their pocket, if they saw someone who need to be helped, they would give out 900. They only retain 100 for themselves. I remember many years ago when I was a child, at that time, I was 11 years old. And my junior school, I was in junior school. I had to travel, I have to take a ferry. Like, it's the same as like I was living on Bowen Island. I have to take a ferry to North Van to my school. So I had to take a ferry to my school every morning. I was 11 years old approximately. And one morning I was on a ferry, the Hong Kong ferry. Each ferry carry 300, 400 people on the passengers on the upper floor, and there's a lot of cars on the lower floor. And I was sitting in there. I was hurrying, doing some unfinished work that I haven't done, my homework that I haven't done. I make use of the time to do my homework on the ferry because I was quite lazy at that time. I always count on having my homework, doing my homework, and then when I was doing it, I looked up and I saw a monk. A monk was having a bow in his hand and is going to every passenger begging for money. A monk shouldn't be begging for money. A monk should be going arms round for food, right? Was begging for money. But in my kind, small heart, I thought, this monk, he must get lost. He must be from mainland China. At that time, there were a lot of mainland monks, coming from mainland China. They wanted to get away from mainland China. At that time, mainland China was quite relatively poor, underdeveloped. And many people rushed to Hong Kong. So I thought, oh, this monk, he must have fled from mainland China to Hong Kong, and he was on his way. Or maybe he didn't have any money for taking a bus or something like that. So every morning I was given by my mom $1.50 for my lunch, $1.50 for my lunch. And seeing that a monk needed the money, I gave him all the $1.50. Nobody gave him anything. So when he came the bowl to me, I saw looking at the bowl. There was nothing in the bowl. He was already going arms round to about 100. Almost, I was sitting at the back. Was going almost 100 and 200 people. I saw nothing in the bowl. So I put the $1.50 all in this bowl. And I still remember his smile. He smiled at me, and I still remember he didn't have any teeth in here. I still remember that gap, the front the three gap was one smile. I could see a black hole in it, and that black hole still flashes in my mind, even up to this day. So he didn't have any money. Nobody wanted to give him any money because they were so suspicious of monks going on arms round in the morning. And everybody was so tired in the morning. Some people were reading newspapers. Some people were just sleeping and dozing off. I was hurriedly doing my homework, and I look up this. I was actually watching since he started begging in there. So he didn't have any money. So I gave him all of it. I was 11 years old at that time. And what happened to my lunch? I tried to borrow from my friends. I borrowed 50 cents from here and 50 cents from there, and I got $1.50. I still have my lunch, and I finally paid back. But at that juncture, at that moment, I didn't think about my own lunch. I just thought about maybe I should give it to that monk who didn't have any money for traffic, for transportation, so I just give it out. And later I found in sutras that if you really give to a monk who is really in need, you have a lot of blessings. I found it out later. And that's the reason why I became a monk myself now. And also I didn't have any, in my life, I haven't been really short of anything. I really haven't really been very poor, maybe that's the reason, that's cause and effect. So that's parsimony. Some people never want to give out. I can see a lot of people who have this kind of problem, parsimony. Many years ago, we gave out lunch, Chinese or whoever you are, at lunchtime, and I said, it's free, but you can give any money you want. You can give donations. And sometimes we really give a good lunch, have good food. And you know what happened? And then after they eat their food, and they deposit money into the box, donation box. And sometimes, at one day, they didn't give in anything and didn't drop in any money in the box. So I heard cling, there's a cling in there. And I was interested in how much money that person dropped in. 25 cents. I mean, the lunch is worth more than 25 cents. You ate a lunch and you only drop in 25 cents. So you must have, despised the lunch. Nobody would give him 25 cents for a good lunch, would you? If he was forced to do a hamburger, he would give him $1.50. How much is a hamburger these days? How much is a hamburger? $8? $8, maybe about 12 years ago, it could be about $4, right? A hamburger is worth $4. I remember that lunch was quite a good lunch, and he only put in 25 cents. Cling, 25 cents. He didn't want to give. He's so parsimonious. So parsimony, pride, concealment, flattery, and deceiving. So these are the secondary ones. And in the first 5 consciousnesses, there are only 13. The 5 consciousnesses do not have all these 10. No. Because all these 10 secondaries, why are they called secondary? They're called secondary because not because they are unimportant. Because they are so hidden, so subtle. The eyes do not have hatred. The ears do not have vengeance. They don't have vexation. The tongue do not have jealousy. So these are so subtle, so unnoticeable, so skillful that only the mentality, only the 6 consciousness have all of them. The eyes do not have them. So that's the reason why they're not included in the eyes' unwholesome mental functions. All these 10, they don't exist in the eyes. They only exist in the mind, in the mentality of it. And they exist, they're so skillful, so subtle, so unnoticeable. You have a lot of jealousy that you may not know. You're so parsimonious that you may not know. You don't want to give out. You have so much pride in you. You're so proud of yourself that you may not know. You have a lot of flattery in you. You do not know. You're so egoistic. You may not know, because they're so skillful, so subtle. All these. Now, also, the eyes have greediness, anger, ignorance, and ignorance. Remember, out of the 26, the first 5 consciousnesses only have 13. So you drop 10 right there. So where do you drop the other 3? The eyes do not have doubt. The eyes just capture the images. The eyes do not have false views. The ears do not have false views. The eyes do not have arrogance. Your tongue do not have arrogance. So you drop arrogance, doubt, and false views with the first 5 consciousness. So altogether you drop 13, right? So what do we have? Let's get back to the very beginning. So the eyes, the first 5 consciousness, only have this and this and these. And then you ask, how can the eyes have shamelessness? This shamelessness and no guilt is so slight in the first 5 consciousnesses. They are very unnoticeable. They may not even exist in some situations, but they have a little bit, according to the study of the consciousness, they have a little bit of those. So these are the explanations of all these, of all the mental functions. The root mental functions, the unwholesome mental functions, the meaning of them, what's the meaning of laziness, thoughts wandering and all that. We already have explained it in many sessions before. The first 5 consciousnesses have the 11 of them, the wholesome ones. Faith, shamefulness, guilt, no greed, no hatred, no ignorance, diligence, joy, equanimity, no indolence, no harming. Now we have, these are the good ministers that are in our consciousness. In other words, we're not all bad. We're not all negative. We're not all, hopeless. In our mind, we also have the good ministers. It's just we have the bad ones, more bad ones than the good ones. Why? Why do you say, how come the Buddha said we have more bad ones than good ones? Because if you have all the good ones, you are not in this world. You are in the second level of the world. Our existence is in the lower level. There are better ones, there are better existence, sentient beings than us. They are in the Rupa Dhatu. The apparent characteristics, as far as karmic energy is concerned, in the level higher than us is, they do not have the sensuous mental afflictions which we have. In other words, in that world, there's no such thing as relationship. In this world, we think relationship is important, but in this world, is the relationship, is the relationship between male and female that get us into this world. In the higher world, they don't need that anymore. They only have one gender. If there's a gender exists, Gender exists only when that is sensuality. Only. But in that level, there's no such thing as gender, no man and woman, no such thing. That is a higher level. And then, of course, there's another higher level. So the reason why we have more unwholesome mental functions, the mental function is because we have done all these unwholesome acts. That the reason why we went into this world. This is the karmic world, the world of desires. Okay, there's 4 neutral or uncategorized mental functions. They don't exist in the first 5 consciousnesses. Drowsiness, regret, investigation, and scrutiny. They don't have drowsiness. They don't have regret. Drowsiness, this is when we are full, when we are dull-minded and confused and cannot accurately cognize things. If you sleep, in order to ease the body of meditation, that is wholesome drowsiness. If you oversleep, that is unwholesome. Sometimes drowsiness does not refer to sleep, but to the function that occurs at a time of falling asleep. So drowsiness, they don't occur in the first 5 consciousnesses. Regret, there's 2 kinds of regret. You feel regretful of things that you have done wrong, and that is a wholesome regret. But sometimes you feel regretful of things that you have done right, that is unwholesome regret. Let me give you an example on this. You come into a charitable organization, and then on that day you're particularly kind. You feel happy. You feel very compassionate on that day, and you went into a charitable organization that you like so much. That organization care for children, for example, or care for handicapped. Then you feel so like it. Then you have on that day you have so much compassion. You wanted to give out in your bank account, and you have say $10,000. So you were so pleased, and then you want to give out 5,000, half of it. So you donated 5,000 to a charitable organization, and then you've gone home. And then you call up your friend. You say, I donated 5,000. Oh, are you stupid? You donated 5,000. You only have 10,000. Friend, you donated 5,000. You know how much is $5,000? You immediately feel regretful. Oh yeah, I should kick myself. I shouldn't have donated 5,000. After all, I don't know what they do with the 5,000. They may spend all the 5,000 in administration. Oh, I shouldn't have done it. I should only donated about 500. Why should I donate 5,000? You feel very regretful on the compassion you expressed at the time of donating. That's an unwholesome regret. When you have done something good on charity, you don't regret on it. You don't regret on what you have done. But you have done the wrong thing, you regret on it, that's wholesome. You know, I have scolded someone, I feel regretful. That's wholesome, because a regretful feeling is a wholesome feeling on the things that you have done wrong. Or the things you have done right and you feel regretful about it is not a wholesome regret. Investigation and scrutiny. It could be wholesome or unwholesome. They refer to functions that rely on language to further clarify the cognition object and deepen investigation of it. These are factors of volition and intelligence and lies within the mental or the mano consciousness. So the first 5 consciousnesses do not have this uncategorized mental functions, indeterminate. They're indeterminate. So getting back to the first slide that we have studied concomitant mental functions that happen simultaneously with the first 5 consciousnesses. The total concomitant mental functions, there are 51. Out of the 51, only 34, only the first 5 consciousnesses only have the 34. So that's how we study the mind. We study the mind, our own mind in detail, so that we know what we're doing. That's Buddhism. That's one sect of Buddhism that studies the mind, and that's called Vijnanamatrata. We'll carry on. We still have other categories that we have to study. For example, the categories. What do we have? We have next time we'll study the necessary conditions, preconditions. There are conditions for the first 5 consciousness to come true, to act, to behave. And there are also how does each consciousness function, and how do we transform our tainted consciousness into enlightenment according to what the Buddha taught us. How do these 5 consciousness can lead us to enlightenment? These 5 consciousness could be doing bad things that lead us to hell, but at the same time they could be doing good actions to lead us to enlightenment. Don't blame your consciousness. Don't say my eyes are bad, my ears are bad. They are tools, but you have used them wrongfully. You use them to steal, to kill, to commit sexual misconduct, to do all kinds of bad things. But the Buddha said, turn around. You could utilize them. You can transform them. Utilize these tools to see good things, to listen to good things, to do good work. You are the master of your own senses, but you haven't mastered them well. Now you should learn how to master them in your meditation, how you slowly master your senses. Why are you taking meditation? Because just of good health? Just give you peace of mind? You learn how to master your own senses. That's what the Buddha taught us.